Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome to tonight's stream. We are back in the lab for your weekly source of the rundown of all things Indoor Football League. Whether you are here for the recap of the week that was, the preview of the week that is to come, or any other of the great, amazing goings on of this league, you have found yourself in the right place. It is 9 p.m. over here on the East Coast, which means it's time once again for Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're hopping on live, really appreciate the attention and the interest in the IFL. For those of you who are either new to this channel or new to the league, I want to welcome you aboard and glad you found us at the time when we did, because the season is quickly nearing its end. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor and arena football game. That is a passion that I have channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site which specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14 member teams. Each week, our staff brings you pretty much everything that you would want to have. Team by team updated rosters, weekly previews, game recaps, breaking news as it develops, historical league results going all the way back to as early as the 2016 season. So whether you're a league historian or just an active fan of the here and now, Sports Coast to Coast is a must-have destination to get your fix on all things related to the game. I've put a link to the site below in the description. There you will also find the written piece that I put together and posted on the site yesterday morning, which serves as the basis for tonight's stream. I was out of town yesterday, which was why I elected to hold this stream tonight. But without further delay, we will kick things off here. We are at week 18 after the abbreviated holiday weekend last week. Teams have either 2 or 3 more games to go, depending on how their schedules have shaken out to this point. So we do have some teams eliminated from playoff contention already, but we do still have 3 spots for grabs amongst the remaining teams that have yet to clinch, which I believe so far that count is 6 teams fighting for 3 spots. You got 4 teams still in play in the East and a couple in the West. So we will talk about all of those upcoming matchups and playoff scenarios as we move forward with tonight. So we'll first start off with a Week 17 recap. It'll be a pretty short and sweet one because we had just 3 games on the schedule. We had one really close game in Orlando that went down to the wire. And then we had Vegas and Arizona picking up key wins in Western Conference battles to enhance their hopes of a deep postseason run at home. So we will go over each of those 3 games in the detail that they deserve. We will add them up to our population of results so far this season to help us identify the hottest and coldest of the trends. We'll also go over our bet records so far on the season, differentiating by money line, spread, and total bets. And once we get all of that reflection done and out of the way, we'll dive into Week 18, which serves up our final 7-game slate of the season. That's how you know that you're facing the music and the season is winding down. But it's been a great one. We got to celebrate it celebrate it as best we can here. So 5 games on Saturday and 2 on Sunday to look forward to this week. We'll go over each one and make our main game pick, and then put together a 3-leg parlay of the week, which, as you can see, last week's met another heartbreaking ending. We've had a bunch of them wind up in that same fate recently. Could this be the week where we can say we are overdue for that win? All right, week 17 game by game recap. Here we go. We started off on Sunday afternoon, a matchup in Albuquerque where the Chupacabras hosted the Vegas Nighthawks in what was New Mexico's home season finale. Unfortunately, here for the Chupacabras, this game, they were already facing immense odds in hosting the reigning champions who had just gotten a massive Hail Mary victory the week before for a 1-point win against the San Antonio Gunslingers. The start of this one actually looked kind of promising for the Chupacabras, at least on the offensive front where they have struggled for much of the season. Avon Rucker was, for the most part, leading that offense up the field fairly consistently. Unfortunately for him, he was sacked pretty hard on a drive early in the second quarter, wound up suffering a shoulder injury that forced him out of the contest. So, without a backup quarterback on the roster, because Donovan Porter-Ree was made inactive, all the Chupacabras could do was try to tread water, operating out of the Wildcat the rest of the game with LaJames White taking the snaps at quarterback, and really was only forced into attempting, I think it was 6 passes in the game, only one of which went for a 34-yard touchdown to Demont Street, with that play coming well within the point of the game where you knew the outcome was already dictated at that point. Vegas also having injury concerns of their own with Jaden DeLaura out for a second straight game. Quentin Randolph also held out of this contest. But no problems for Quincy Crittenden. Gets his second IFL win as a starter. Leads Vegas to a 50-point outing in total. The final score from the Land Enchanted, Vegas 15 and New Mexico 16, which gives Vegas at worst the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. It is the second time in 3 seasons where they have finished within the top 2 in the conference. Our tail end of Sunday's doubleheader featured an Eastern Conference rivalry, and a pretty dang good one at that. The Green Bay Blizzard traveling to Orlando to play the Pirates in a game that had massive implications for both teams. Green Bay cements a playoff home game with the win. Orlando strengthening their case for home playoff games themselves with a possible win. The early stretch of this game was pretty much the high ceiling football that we have come to see from the Green Bay Blizzard throughout the season. They scored on every single one of their drives, crossing over the goal line for a touchdown, including on the final play of the second half on a drive where Corey Roberson worked the end game clock perfectly. So a touchdown run by Kyrie Robinson from 1 yard out, giving Green Bay a 12-point lead at the half. But Orlando at home, we know how strong they are, and they showed it off in emphatic fashion in the third quarter. A quarter that featured 2 runs from Puka Williams for touchdowns, one going for 30 yards, the other going from 45 yards. The defense finally limiting Green Bay's offense, forcing some of the issue on Liam Thompson and company. Orlando led by 1 at the end of 3. Fourth quarter was very much a back-and-forth affair. Green Bay scoring a go-ahead touchdown with about a couple minutes left on the clock. And that set up an Orlando drive down by 2 with the clock winding down inside of a minute to try to set themselves up for a potential game-winning score, whether that be a touchdown or a field goal. The Pirates, though, they fell victim to a bit of a rookie mistake from Paxton DeLaurent. It was a second down play, designed run up the middle. Very easily could have just eaten the ball there, forced Green Bay to turn a timeout. Instead, he tries to make a miracle pitch to the outside to Puka Williams, who was unable to hop on top of it. Marcus Hillman for Green Bay, on the other hand, was on the spot to get the recovery for Green Bay's defense. The only takeaway of the contest by either team in this game. And it turned up to effectively serve as the game winner. Green Bay, up to a 12-2 record on the season, the best mark in the IFL. they escaped Central Florida 52-50 with the win against the Orlando Pirates. So for right now, Orlando in that number 4 spot with suddenly not as clear of a path to a playoff berth. They still control their own destiny, mind you, but a win in this game would have certainly made the upcoming matchup, which we'll get to in a little bit, a lot more tantalizing. So that was Sunday's action. We had a Monday night game for the first time in a while. Another heavyweight Western Conference tilt. The Arizona Rattlers traveling to San Diego to play the Strike Force, who had not lost a game at Front Wave Arena entering this game. Somebody forgot to tell that to Kevin Guy, Max Myler, and that entire Arizona team. It was just a signature championship level performance for the 7-time world champions. And they really set the tone on both sides of the ball right away. They made life insanely difficult for Nate Davis throughout the entire game. A couple of timely stops in the first half really fueled Arizona's offense, which for all intents and purposes was practically perfect in this game. As the Strike Force, they did force some 3rd and 4th downs, but Arizona came up with the response on each and every one of those. San Diego did fight to get back within 7 at the third quarter, but from that point, Arizona just took it away in the end. Another couple of defensive stands throughout the second half really allowed the Rattlers to distance themselves. Yashin McKee Sr., who earned the IFL Defensive Player of the Week honors, adding the cherry on top with the pick 6 inside the game's final minute. So for the second time this season, the Arizona Rattlers log a lopsided win, this time on the road against the San Diego Strike Force, 65-36, the final in that one, which suddenly puts San Diego in a little bit of a hot seat in terms of holding on to a top 2 seed. With this win from Arizona, putting them, I believe it's a game and a half out of San Diego for that second spot. But notably, with the 2-way tiebreaker against the Strike Force, should the standings come out to that when all the dust settles. So that was our week 17. Our bet record, I mean, you see it right there. Not my finest hour. 1-2 with the lone win being a minus 1,600. That's about as bad as you can get without being 0-3 completely, which, you know what? We set out to log a win, and we did. Got super unlucky with the way that the Orlando game shook out. We definitely should have gotten at least a shake, a fighter's chance on a potential field goal attempt. Obviously, no guarantee that it would have gone in, but I mean, you hate to lose a bet when your team has the ball and they fumble it away. But be that as it may, that brings us to a record on the season at 44-50. So those 50 losses actually represent just one less than the total amount that we had throughout all of last season, in which we went 68-51. So no doubt it's been a troublesome year on the prediction front. We've had an insane number of losses. In fact, more than half of our losses by one possession, that 8 points or fewer, which really just adds that feeling of helplessness at the end of the day. But on the other side of the coin, if you take even 7 of those bad breaks, flip them the other way, our record suddenly turns into a mighty respectable 51-43. So kind of have to look at it both ways. Try to extract as much optimism as you can get from whichever angle you look at it. But at the very least, our record on the plays of the week, the Mortal Megas, are still positive at 9-8, despite dropping last week's Strike Force plus 105 Mortal. So that's where we stand for the season. And we are looking almost vertically upwards at a strong finish. The 3-leg parlay of the week, we got that seat at the table again for the third time in 4 weeks. Our first 2 legs converted, only for that third leg at the very end to trip our efforts up. At the very least, this one wasn't a Northern Arizona game this time around, but still hurts much the same. But really, these picks have been pretty spot on since week 9 when we got our first parlay win of the season. You take those numbers right there, and you have yourself a record of 18-9 on a per leg basis. Hitting on 2/3 of these on really any stretch is pretty astonishing, unless, of course, you're my man Cody in the alley, which is routine for you at this point. But yeah, we're still looking up for our fourth parlay win, which was one of our preseason goals. So we've got the rest of this season, the rest of the regular season, should I say, along with a potential parlay attempt in the conference semifinals, possibly the conference finals. Now we'll have to see where our mind is at that. But yeah, we're right there, close to accomplishing a goal. We just got to go get it, leaning on our strong form. Here's our graphical representation of our year-to-date results in terms of net gain, or in this case, most of the season, net loss. Another down week leads to a bit of a spike downwards. So that flat method, right around 15 units. Weighted method, hovering around the 13 unit neighborhood. Again, if we can somehow slice that in half throughout the final few weeks of the season and into the postseason, it would at least be some positive momentum to look forward to heading into 2027. Our yearly results here so far. One of the hottest bets of the recent past has been overs, which are 8-2 in the past 2 weeks, with an average over 95 points per game, as the indoor football fan base has been treated to a frequent amount of some stellar shootouts. So we'll have to see if that keeps rolling along here as the season comes down to its most pivotal stage. Folks who were with us last year remember the insane scoring run that last year's postseason went on, particularly the 2 conference finals, as well as the IFL National Championship game. So that'll be something to look forward to. Obviously, with each matchup, we'll want to see, how teams match up against one another, how they've been doing throughout the season as a whole. But yeah, for right now, overs seem to be a pretty reliable play by and large throughout the season. Home teams on both the spread and the money line continue to be red hot, even though they were a little bit cooled down last week. It was a chalky week last week. All 3 favorites won, but we did get at least one cover with Orlando beating the handicap against the Green Bay Blizzard. So even at that, both of those bets are still converting at an over 63% rate on the season. Moneyline favorites are still performing a bit above what we've seen from a 3-year average in the past. So could we look out for some potential underdogs throughout these final few weeks to come in and prop that number up closer to the 33-34% average that we have seen? Our team-by-team trends are right here. The one thing that you'll notice that jumps off the page right away, the Orlando Pirates, who are the number 1 team in the league against the spread. They are also the number 1 team in the league at cashing the over. They started off the season, of course, with that 7-game over streak. They've kind of evened out a bit 50-50 from there, but they still average 95 points in their ball games this season in terms of a combined total, which still sits a little bit less than Green Bay, who overtook Orlando for that lead in that department. But yeah, that is a notable trend if you're looking at Orlando to sort of think about. Some other notable strong performers on the spread, Vegas and Green Bay, both of last year's championship participants, 9-5 on the spread. San Diego and Tulsa, respective dark horses in their respective conferences, 8-5 against the spread. On the other side of the ledger, you got San Antonio and Iowa tied for a league worst mark at 4-9 against the spread. Northern Arizona is 5-8, and New Mexico 5-9. From the over/under front, It's been a strong year to the over, so it should come as no surprise that the majority of the league is above 500 in this department. Green Bay and Vegas, again, both 9-5 there. Tulsa and San Diego at 9-4. So a bit of a unique pattern developing here. Teams that cover the spread, more often than not, have gone above their projected point totals. Pretty fascinating that things kind of shook out that way, to be honest. From what I see there, it's also just 4 teams under 500 from an over standpoint, cashing more often to the under, with Quad City spearheading that effort with 9 games going under, and Tucson close behind with 8 unders in their 13 games. Looking at our active streak table here, you'll notice that we only have 2 spread streaks that are 3 games or higher. In the case of the successful conversion rate, Orlando, covering the spread in each of their 5 games since that disappointing loss in Tucson on May 30th, whereas Jacksonville had a rough road stand for 2 games, and then they end up dropping the game at home to San Diego a couple weeks ago. So they are 0-3 against the spread in their last 3. We have 4 teams currently riding 3+ game over streaks, spearheaded by Tulsa's 6-game over streak. San Antonio, Green Bay, and Jacksonville, each with 3-game over streaks, and Quad City 3-0 to the under, which has been the tip of the spear, if you will, of their league best 9-4 under record. Our yearly results by team are shown here. With our loss on the Northern Arizona game a couple weeks ago, we're going to fall short with them in terms of bringing all of our teams here to 7 betting wins, but we are still firmly in play to potentially push the rest of the league across that mark with some successful results here to end the season. We managed to bring 13 of the 14 teams home last season. But in order to keep that mark this season, we're going to need wins on the games involving New Mexico, San Diego, Fishers, and Tulsa. I don't believe any of those opponents overlap, but it's worth noting. The other thing worth noting here, I'm trying to get at least 1 win in all of those different bet types per team. So New Mexico, Northern Arizona, and San Diego haven't won an over-under pick yet. Could this be the week where we target that? Same deal goes for our Tulsa Oilers spread betting, which is currently 0-4. So in a perfect world, we'd like to get all of those along with Green Bay money line, if the situation is right, to that 1 win mark. I'm optimistic that we can do it. It's about time some of those crazy bounces that have led to some of those tilted records go our way. All right, disclaimer time. The lines and odds that we're going to be using today are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook. And this series and tonight's stream is purely rooted in curiosity, entertainment, and passion of the game. It's not meant to be construed as betting advice or used as a means that you make money with. We've seen time and again in the sports world, there's no real such thing as a lock or a guarantee. Otherwise, why would we play the game? If you are going to play, please do so legally, as you must be over 21 years of age or older to participate in gaming activities. If you would like to tail or fade my selections, I encourage you to practice safe gaming habits. That includes setting a budget in terms of both time and money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is potentially having an issue with problem gaming, there's lots of resources online and issued by your respective state that can provide assistance in that matter. Haveagameplan.org listed below is one example. Responsibleplay.org is another. Both of which offer really, really good resources in terms of answering questions, debunking gambling myths, explaining maybe some of the fallacies or misconceptions surrounding the epidemic. So definitely recommend if you feel like you're maybe teetering along that territory. Um, if that's you, know that you're not alone. You have support, and that help is out there for you. And with that said, let's take in this final big board of the season in all its glory and splendor. And it is time that we attack it. We will start off with Saturday's opening game, the only non-conference or interconference game, whichever of the two that you like to call it, of the week ahead. Orlando traveling to San Antonio, where the Pirates are actually laying 3 points despite being the road team against the San Antonio Gunslingers. The over-under in this game is 83.5. On the money line, Orlando minus 155, San Antonio plus 130 for the outright win. And even though this game only affects one team per conference, it figures to have a sizable effect on the playoff races therein. In the case of the Orlando Pirates, they could actually clinch a playoff spot if they were to win this game. It would involve Fishers losing against Quad City later in the evening, but that scenario is out there that should incentivize Orlando to go out and get this victory. If they do lose, it just winds up being a do or die showdown between them and the Freight on the final day of the season in a couple weeks. As for San Antonio, their playoff prospects are a lot bleaker, to put it frankly. They are 4-9 and very likely need to win out the rest of their slate in order to have a shot at overtaking the Tucson Sugar Skulls, who are the current 4th seed holders with a record of 6-7. They would obviously need Tucson to win no more than one game along their final 3. But notably, the Gunslingers do hold the tiebreaker. So they do have that ace in the back pocket should they need it. But that's a little bit of a rundown of each team's playoff situations. Now, Orlando comes into this game, when you look at this from an expectations viewpoint, a very interesting game for them. Obviously, they fought hard against Green Bay. They rallied from a double-digit halftime deficit, but they couldn't provide the finishing play, fumbling it away to Green Bay at the very end. So you know that this Orlando team under Rod Windsor is going to want to exact revenge here and log another win, which, interestingly enough, is something that they have done very well so far this season. In their prior 5 losses before last week, pretty dang good bounce back team, if not the best bounce back team in the IFL. Perfect 5-0 against the spread, 4-1 straight up in those games immediately following a loss. So that's something to look a little bit out to if you're looking at a trend standpoint. But fascinatingly enough, there is another trend that's working against the Pirates here. In fact, 2, now that I think about it. One of them is this. Against Western Conference opponents not named the New Mexico Chupacabras, the Pirates have lost each of their last 11 games outright against the Western Conference, excluding New Mexico. They are also a lifetime 3-15 against the spread when they have been made as favorites on the road. Now, the last time that they were favorites on the road was, I believe, 2 weeks ago against Quad City. They went on a nice run in the middle of the game, and they got the job done there. So is that 3-15 ATS record in that situation perhaps a bit of ancient history? Or is it out there as a reminder for what could lie ahead? But I find the offense of Orlando versus the defense of San Antonio probably the most fascinating matchup of this game, featuring a couple of revenge game narratives as well. Naquan Murray, the receiver for Orlando, and Terry Beckner Jr., the defensive lineman for San Antonio, were both on the other team last season, doing a little bit of a switcheroo in the offseason. But yeah, this should be a very, very interesting game. The teams seem to be polar opposites in terms of their styles of play. So it's going to be very interesting to see which team dictates the outcome one over the other. And as I thought about selections for this game, I wound up pivoting back to the home dog here. I went back to the home dog with San Antonio at +3. If this were +2.5, I'd probably reconsider. But the fact that we do get that spread right on exactly a field goal margin makes my thought about this bet a little bit more optimistic. Now, I do realize this does go completely against the grain of the trends that we looked at earlier, with Orlando a league best 10-4 against the spread, and San Antonio a league worst 4-9 in that category. If you're looking at the numbers that way, you pretty much have to answer the question, which trends are you going to trust more? And I still cannot bring myself to pick an Orlando spread under 99% of circumstances. I'm sorry, but that's just what the past few years have taught me to avoid with Orlando spread, or the Pirates spread on the road. Not necessarily singling out Orlando because they've been very, very good by and large this season, but I don't know. I just feel like San Antonio kind of has that back further up against the wall. Their offensive capabilities have been stabilized for the most part with the entry of Zach Calzada at quarterback. That receiving group figures to get a lot healthier with guys like Austin Upshaw, Derrick Rose, Deon McShane. With some of those guys in and out of the lineup with injuries, they could come back potentially full strength. But I do think we got a pretty close game here. It's not going to be a cakewalk for either side. But with the +3, again, we are protected in the event that Orlando boots through a game-winning field goal. Or maybe if San Antonio's down by 3, needing a tying field goal, maybe that misses and this would wind up as a push as well. So we've had, I believe, just one, possibly two of our bets all time in the past 4 years result in a push. Let's be honest, it'd be pretty funny to see a third one fall into that bucket as well. So in a scenario here where we're going a little bit against the grain, but also a little bit with it, depending on how you look at it, we'll start this off with San Antonio +3. Admittedly, as a Pirate faithful since day one, I am kind of have my hands tied in performing my civic duty there. But with that said, let us move on to the 6:00 game, Eastern time, of course, between the Green Bay Blizzard and the Iowa Barnstormers, with Green Bay able to clinch the #1 spot in the Eastern Conference with a win. They are favored to do so, and in convincing fashion as well. 21.5-point favorites on the road. The over-under is 87 in the hook. On the money line, Green Bay, you're laying that crooked 1450 number. But if you like Iowa to win, stage a crazy upset, +850 there. But as for the Green Bay Blizzard, I mean, what can be said that hasn't already in terms of the praise that you can give this entire organization from top to bottom? Their only 2 losses have been on the road at Quad City, ironically enough. But aside from those couple hiccups, they have, by and large, steamrolled the rest of the league, especially at home. Now, this game, along with their season finale in Jacksonville in 2 weeks, are going to be road games. But in every shred of likelihood, those may be the final games that they have to play outside the Resch Center until a possible appearance in Tucson in the IFL National Championship. That offense is a league best in terms of point scoring per game, led by several players that could claim first team or second team all IFL honors, including Liam Thompson at quarterback, Kyrie Robinson at running back, and guys like Trayvon Alexander and Drayshawn Hudson at wide receiver. And part of the reason why Green Bay has been so successful in building upon last year's Eastern Conference Championship season, a defensive turnaround fueled by guys like Jaquan Griffin, Frankie West when he was healthy. He is on IR now. But you also have guys like Fred Flavors and Marcus Hillman, the latter of whom made that big fumble recovery to clinch the win in Orlando last week. So Green Bay looking to continue rolling things along here, whereas Iowa looking for any sort of positive momentum to close out what has become another forgettable season, unfortunately, for the Des Moines faithful. The quarterback situation, we're going to have to see if Dante Avila Santos draws the start. Noah Bodden did impress in his limited action 2 weeks ago when the Barnstormers nearly upset the Tulsa Oilers. But Bodden got hurt in that game. Avila Santos had to go back in. And to his credit, the offense still flowed pretty well throughout that one against a very tough opponent, playing some pretty darn good football right now. But yeah, Iowa, I mean, the consistency just hasn't been there this year. They've had games like they had last week and the one that they had against Jacksonville, which were their highest point scoring totals of the season with 48 in both of those games. The question becomes, with guys like David Elder at running back, Curtis Ravenel at wide receiver, are you able to replicate at least some of that in what promises to be a super, super tough matchup? So my pick for this game, Iowa games have just such a weird way of going completely the opposite way that you expect. And again, even though there are some numbers out there that tell me that this isn't necessarily the best pick, Green Bay minus 21.5 does stand out to me as a bet where if the teams play out to their usual averages, specifically where Green Bay scores 54 a game and Iowa scores 27 a game, if you get that 54-27 result, this bet will win. Now, the argument against this wager is that this is, in fact, more than 3 touchdowns. Minus 20.5, you could afford a 21-point win with those 3 touchdowns and 3 field goal or 3 extra points as your margin of victory. Green Bay also has a little bit of a disadvantage against this number in that their largest road win this season was by 11 points. And it was against this same Iowa team at Casey Center. So I really don't know what to make of that number, but I'm not going minus 1450 again. I have another punt play for later that accomplishes that in a much less exaggerated capacity. But yeah, like Green Bay, if you're a firm believer that they can flirt with like a mid 50s or even a high 60s number, this would be the type of a matchup against Iowa's beleaguered defense to where Green Bay probably has one of their ceiling games. You just have to trust that the defense maybe plays a little bit above average to get this across. But I certainly like Green Bay's chances of a convincing win more than Iowa's potential to keep this one at least semi-close at that specified number. So Green Bay minus 21.5 will be my play. And in that scenario, Green Bay would clinch the Eastern Conference #1 seed in some crazy, crazy style. All right. 7 p.m. kick features a provisional 2 versus 3 matchup. The way that the standings currently show. Jacksonville, the #2 in the conference right now, heading to Tulsa to take on the 3rd-ranked Oilers in the conference. At home, the Oilers are slight favorites by 1.5 points. Notice the slight difference in odds there, laying a little bit more on the Tulsa side than you are the Jacksonville side. The over-under is 90 in the hook. The money line gives Jacksonville at plus 114 on the road and Tulsa minus 135. The last time these two teams played was a very, very unique game. The offenses were highly efficient, but possession count was very, very limited. And what turned out as a 41-35 Jacksonville come from behind victory over Tulsa. So the Oilers looking to exact a little bit of revenge against a Jacksonville side that historically has given them trouble throughout the 3-year rivalry of these two franchises. The Sharks, having lost 3 consecutive games, I know a lot of heat has been placed on the move from James Cahoon to Sammy Edwards for the quarterback spot. But let's be real here. The offense has not been the problem for Jacksonville, because they've put up, I think it's 45, 42, and 55 points in their last 3 games. That record is usually good enough to get you at least 1, most likely 2 wins in any 3-game stretch that you have. Unfortunately for the Sharks, though, it's been their defense that has been problematic. Within that same 3-game stretch, they've given up 54 again, along with 62. So any sort of hope of a Jacksonville turnaround is going to have to revolve around a comeback effort from the defense. Looking at guys like Chris Rice, Michael Moore, Dylan Brown, Clay Fields. We know that the talent is there, and they flaunted the upside in the early part of the season when they had that 9-1 start. The question becomes, can they flip that switch back on as they come up against some pretty tough opponents here down the line, including a Tulsa team that is on a 6-game winning streak following a 2-5 start, looking every bit like a team that could wreak some havoc in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Oilers are looking to potentially steal away a number 2 seed, get a chance to host playoff football for the first time in franchise history, which would be another building block upon last year, which was their first ever playoff appearance, where they went on the road and lost to the Green Bay Blizzard in the first round. But the bye week came and went. Guys from Tulsa get rest and recoup, and an additional week to prepare for this Jacksonville team. The offense under TJ Edwards has been outstanding. It has done its part in lifting the Oilers to at least 45 points in all 6 of the victories along their current streak. The defense, led by the mayor himself, Trey Harvey, along with guys like Ulrich Jones, Sedarius Doss, they've had their moments too. And that Tulsa Oiler defense, never one where you can say is really bad in any stretch. But, they're always going to be there, and they will make you pay if given the opportunity. So this is going to be a fantastic game. My pick is another team at home on the spread. 3rd consecutive home spread pick to kick off this week. I've got the Oilers minus 1.5. Keep the point. I don't need it. Although if the Oilers do win by a single point, I probably would cry in retrospect. But in any event, you look at Tulsa's home record. They are 4-2. Their only losses were by 2 points to a then hot Fishers Freight team and 6 points against Green Bay in a game where the offense just uncharacteristically fizzled out throughout that fourth quarter of that one. Aside from that, they've had some convincing results at Box Center, including a 9-point win against San Diego, a game-winning field goal giving them a victory against Orlando not too long ago. So against some of the best teams in the league in this building, the Oilers can compete and have proven the ability to win games. And this Jacksonville team, they're probably going to straighten it out eventually, more likely than not. But with an 0-3 against the spread stretch and going into this critical game, I've called the Tulsa Oilers at various points over the past couple of years the biggest respecter of my coin. Let's see if they're able to carry that torch this week on my mortal Megamax bet of the week. This will be the play of the week for my 2-unit max, with Tulsa getting a multi-point win against their adversaries from the Duval County. All right, nearly halfway there in terms of our game-by-game picks. We will cross that threshold after discussing this game between the Fisher's Freight and the Quad City Steamwheelers, with the Steamwheelers at home but being given 6.5 by Fishers. The over-under is 86.5, with the money line offering Fisher's Freight at -230 for the outright win and Quad City +190 for the outright win. Now, for fans in Moline, there is the faintest glimmer of hope here. The Steamwheelers have not yet been eliminated mathematically from playoff contention. However, their path to an insane playoff appearance involves winning each of their final 3 games and hoping for a little bit of help across the league. Specifically, I believe that Jacksonville would need to beat Tulsa and possibly San Antonio over Orlando as well. Though I think it's just the Jacksonville over Tulsa result that they do need. In any event, they get set to host Fishers. And again, they've had now 2 bye weeks in the past 3 weeks. This will be their 3rd game in 27, 28 days, whatever. Is Daquan Neal fully ready to get back into the game following the hamstring injury he suffered in Iowa, which was week 14 or 15, one of those two? Even if that answer is not a convincing yes, Corey Ross's hand might be forced into giving him the green light in really any scenario if Quad City is truly serious about their hopes for some more postseason football. Since they came back into the league in 2022, they have not yet failed to qualify for a postseason. So a loss in this game would put a hard end to that streak. And while that would be disheartening for the Steamwheelers, on the other side, it would be an uplift to the Fisher's Freight, who do have to win this game in order to potentially set up what could amount to be a play-in in the Eastern Conference when the Freight go back home and host the Orlando Pirates in 2 weeks. So that was that playoff scenario that I was talking about a little bit earlier when discussing the Orlando game, is that if Fishers wins in this outing, we do get that de facto playoff game regardless of what Orlando does. So, yeah, this is a very fascinating game. I mean, both teams have their fair share of injury concerns. We did talk about Quad City with their primary injury spot at the quarterback. But Fishers, despite losing JT Stokes to a season-ending injury and having some spattering of injuries between their top 2 tailbacks in Josiah King and Dominic Roberto, they still kept up top 5 form for the most part throughout this season. I mean, even in the loss against Green Bay 2 weeks ago, they put up 50 points. If their defense doesn't give up 83, maybe they have a decent shot to make some noise at the Resch Center. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game to watch, especially if one team gets ahead convincingly early, to kind of see how that impacts the rest of the game and the season, for that matter. In my pick, is going to side with the under here at 86.5. So we're putting a decent amount of stake here in Quad City as right now the league's premier team at cashing the under with that 9-4 under record that we talked about earlier. Which obviously betting on a point total with questions to answer in terms of roster availability, that's always kind of a bit hairy. But I do believe whether or not Daquan Neal starts, this profiles to be a game where Fishers could potentially have a spike game defensively. They're obviously hungry to bounce back in a big way after the fiasco 2 weeks ago at the Resch Center against the Blizzard. The prior meeting against these two teams, which was the season opener back on March 14th, that was a 45-27 Freight win. So Fishers has proven that they can hold Quad City to a low-scoring affair, even with the multi-time IFL MVP potentially at the helm. So that is the relatively bold pick that I have for this one. With the under at 86.5, the under has not treated us well this year by and large, but we're going to give it another go here, give ourselves an honest effort, and see what happens. And that will bring us to our final Saturday game at 9 o'clock, a matchup of two playoff teams as it currently stands in the West. The rubber match between the Tucson Sugar Skulls and the Arizona Rattlers in the Sun Devil State rivalry. Arizona comes back home after their big win at San Diego. They lay 13.5 in this contest. The over-under is 84 in the hook. The money line gives us Tucson at plus 425, Arizona minus 575. And I'll tell you this much. If that game on Monday night is an indication of the team that we're going to get from the Arizona Rattlers once August comes rolling around, I mean, it's very plausible to see banner number 8 raised in Glendale when that time comes. It was just thoroughly impressive what Arizona did on both sides of the ball, defensively getting multiple takeaways and stops, the offense scoring touchdowns on every one of their possessions, also getting a pick six from the defense as that icing on the cake, increasing their margin of victory as a result of that. But yeah, Max Myler back at starter for Arizona, and the Rattlers have put up consecutive 60-point game outings since then. The last time that they played Tucson, it was a bit of a struggle, but it was with Drew Powell at quarterback. And Powell, as talented a player as he is, made some mistakes at the end of that game that saw a 14-point Arizona lead early turn into a 7-point Tucson win. And the Sugar Skulls, curiously enough, they are no stranger to stealing games here in Glendale. They did so in historic fashion last season, turning a third quarter deficit of 34-9 into a triple overtime 50-47 victory, with the 25-point comeback tying a recorded IFL all-time high for largest single game comeback in league's history. So there are certainly some pages of hope in the history book for the Tucson Sugar Skulls in this rivalry. And in their case, the visitors look to bounce back after losing to Northern Arizona 2 weeks ago, where they had a double-digit lead late in the fourth quarter, and again, saw the turnover bug bite them in the rear and wind up as a 2-point loss to the 2-win Wranglers. So looking at San Antonio behind them in the Western Conference standings, they'll hope for another big-time upset here, leaning upon more of a concerted effort in terms of taking care of the ball from the offense with Jerome Johnson and Brandon Mackey, while the defense relying on guys like Tyqua's Legs, Ahmad Lyons, Breon Murray. Looking to put up another fight here against a hyper-talented Arizona team on both sides of the ball. My pick for this game, I mentioned the possibility of doing a punt play earlier, and it's going to come here. I pitched the idea on social media. Do I dare do this wager again? And the intrusive thoughts won. Arizona on the money line. And let's be honest, the way that Arizona carried themselves out in a hostile environment against an elite opponent, doing what they did, how can you not be impressed? Like, I know it's Arizona. They have that expectation for basically any game that they take the field. But man, that was impressive what they did. And I have fully bought in to their legitimacy as championship contenders, regardless of which seed number they pick up for the upcoming playoffs. Serves as a perfect reminder, too, that in 2024, when the Rattlers won their championship, that was as a number 3 seed in the West. So it just goes to show you get hot at the right time, positively anything can happen. Maybe not the best phrase to be saying when I take Arizona minus 575, but the team with the higher ceiling, despite Tucson's pretty impressive form midway through the season, I don't know. I just feel like Arizona, they're going to have the chip on their shoulder. And I think they make do of the team that formerly was considered their younger brother. So we'll go Rattlers money line to close out the week. And if all serves well, that will give us some momentum leading into our Sunday doubleheader, with Sunday games giving us all sorts of problems in the past, really 6 weeks, really. I believe I'm either 2-10 or 3-9 on these main game Sunday picks. So if you've been fading my Sunday picks, congratulations on the immense profit. But in any event, let's dive into these couple. Hope that our fortunes reverse a little bit. New Mexico and Northern Arizona kick off the day's festivities at 4 p.m. Eastern time. The Wranglers are looking to avoid getting swept by New Mexico. They are 7.5-point favorites to accomplish that goal. The over-under is 79.5. On the money line, New Mexico plus 225 for the win. Northern Arizona minus 278, which, ironically enough, I believe was the exact money line payouts for these two teams when they met last 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure it was in Albuquerque. But this will be the first and only meeting of the teams this season in Prescott Valley. The big story for New Mexico surrounds that injury that we mentioned before to Yvonne Rucker. They showed him during that game. After he was hurt, he had the ice on the shoulder. Looked to be a pretty nasty injury. We don't know exactly the severity of it or if it'll cost Rucker any time moving forward, whether it's, a serious injury or just a matter of pain tolerance. But New Mexico might have a quarterback hole that they're going to maybe have to bring somebody in from the outside to give the Chupacabras at least some sort of a passing threat in their offense. An offense, by the way, that has averaged, I believe, right at or under 20 points per game whenever they've been either on the road or in a neutral site this season. So the offensive continuity just has not been there, regardless of who New Mexico seems to toss at that quarterback spot. Jerome Johnson in the early part of the season, Harry Rubidoux midway through. They've had Donovan Portery take snaps. They've had Yvonne Rucker take snaps. For all we know, it could be somebody brand new for this week. So that'll be something to look out for. Maybe if you're more inclined to wait until closer to game time to construct your picks, that'll be something to keep an eye out for. But yeah, at present, the Chupacabras are 2-12, while Northern Arizona is 2-11. The Wranglers, of course, the last time they had a game, it was in this building at Findlay Toyota Center, and they staged a great comeback down, I believe it was 10 points, rallying all the way back, actually 15 points. They were down 15 points. They rallied all the way back to get a 51-49 win against Tucson, and they are looking for what would be their first and only multi-game winning streak of the season. Anthony Garrett is a quarterback that I've been very impressed with since he came into the fold midway through the season. And he's offered up some exceptionally good football while as the home signal caller, with the Wranglers putting up at least 50 points in 3 of the 4 home games that they have played so far. So is that a feat that they are able to replicate again against this New Mexico defense that has had its fair share of perils throughout the season, amidst some player departures, player injuries, things of that sort? So we're going to have to see what both of these teams offer up in a game that's not going to mean really anything for the 2026 season, but could be a substantial building block for whichever side wins as they gear up and prepare for 2027. My pick for this game, it's a bold one. It's a dangerous one, given my history of picks this season, in just about every way that you can slice it. But I've got the under here at 79.5. And really what this boils down to is your belief in the number that New Mexico ultimately puts up on offense with that hole at quarterback. If you want to take the average and say, all right, let's give New Mexico 23 points in this game, Northern Arizona would need 57 to put this number in peril in that scenario. That's a number, even though they've been very impressive at home, they've only topped that exact number once this season in that memorable overtime game against Vegas back on June 7th. But yeah, and again, we showed that bet result chart earlier. I'm 0-6 in Northern Arizona Wranglers over-under bets. I am going to get one of these right eventually. So let's lean a little bit upon the matchup component of this, where we can say, all right, New Mexico games 6-2 to the under away from the land enchanted. With those 2 games that did go over, one of them was the lowest over-under in IFL history, and the other one, which was, I believe, 3 weeks ago at Arizona, relying on a garbage time touchdown with 6 seconds left. A situation where maybe if it weren't for a couple chunk plays offensively on that last drive, that the clock would just run out and we would not be having this conversation at all. In fact, we'd be having the conversation as if New Mexico was 7-1 to the under in their road games. So I think this play makes sense. It could profile very similarly to the 35-32 game that we saw these teams play a few weeks ago. But yeah, it's tough to trust New Mexico in any capacity right now. I mean, that makes Northern Arizona -7.5, Northern Arizona -278, probably more appealing picks depending on the way that you look at it. But I cannot trust a 2-11 team laying 7.5. I just cannot bring myself to do it. So we're going to take the under here in search of some continued offensive struggles for New Mexico. And we go from that contest, which features the lowest implied total of the week, to one of the more exciting matchups of the season, which features features for this week the highest implied total of the week. With San Diego and Vegas doing battle, a rematch of the encounter in Front Wave on Juneteenth. The Nighthawks return home, and they are 8.5-point favorites. The over-under is 95 in the hook. The money line is offering San Diego at a plus 250 number for a bounce back, whereas Vegas is at minus 310. Now, San Diego, this is a very, very critical game for Taylor Jenniser and the Strike Force. You just got punched in the teeth by an Arizona team that perhaps had one of their best games of the past 2 years. What is your response here in this extremely tough road environment? How does Eddie Vander bounce back after having a little bit of an off game last week for the first time since his return from injury? What are guys like Jalen Sample, Shane Hooks, and Cole Blackman able to contribute at that receiving position? Will the defense be able to turn things around after really not having any answers at all against Arizona? Along with similar struggles that they encountered in Jacksonville as well, where fortunately for them, the offense was able to outweigh the optional defense in that 62-55 win in Jacksonville a couple weeks ago. So an opportunity here for San Diego to prove that last week, the disastrous way that went down was more of a blip on the radar than it is a concern about long-term prospects. As for the Vegas Nighthawks, we have seen Jaden DeLaura held out of each of Vegas's last 2 games, those being against New Mexico and 2 weeks ago against San Antonio. So this week is going to provide the answer whether those absences were cautionary amidst, frankly, winnable matchups without the reigning IFL Championship MVP. So if he returns, Vegas's offense pretty much assumes its normal ceiling, especially if Quentin Randolph comes back as well. He was also held out of the New Mexico contest, presumably for rest reasons, but there might be some nagging injury at this point in the season, as there is with pretty much any athlete that takes the field. But yeah, in any event, Vegas got right back on the saddle last week after a month of a bit of a turmoil, despite a 2-2 record, if you can call it that. So yeah, we're going to have to see. They lost to San Diego on that previous meeting in June, 43-39. They fell behind early in that game, couldn't quite get that one defining play to set themselves out in front in the end. They did wind up taking the lead briefly in that contest. But yeah, this is a powerhouse game. This is the number 1 and number 2 seed in the West as things currently stand. Very much deserving of the Yahoo Sports spotlight. My pick for this game, again, I feel like I'm kind of performing my civic duty as a sudden fade aficionado. The under at 95.5 carries some appeal to me. There's the injury and projecting whether players are in and out of the lineup component to it, where if Jaden DeLaura is not quite ready to suit up for this one, we will get another week of Quincy Crittenden, which even though Quincy's put up 43 and 50 points in the 2 wins from the past couple weeks, there still is a little bit of a different feel with maybe that inexperience versus, that known commodity in Jaden DeLaura, like a face of the franchise, face of the league type player. But there's also the San Diego side too, where they're going to look for a bounce back on both sides of the ball, especially defensively, which they were able to do extremely well in their previous win against Vegas back in June. They wound up getting, I believe it was 2 or 3 takeaways in that game, especially early on. And that really set the stage for what had been a big upset for San Diego to keep their winning times rolling. So I envision this matchup as much more of a well-balanced playoff atmosphere competition, where neither team will want to give the other a single inch. We know that both of these offenses do have extremely high ceilings, but so too do their defenses. So at 95.5, we would need, in theory, 14 touchdowns to make it past that number. Certainly plausible that we could get there, especially in a fast-paced, fast-tempo style of game, which Vegas does like to play. But it is a lot. And all it takes is for, a couple empty drives on like 4 or 5 minute possessions to really put this in reasonably solid shape. So it's a high number. We've seen plenty games fall beneath the total here. A close game of like 50-45 would do the trick. Even with that being a fairly high scoring game, even by IFL standards. So that's the way I'm going to lean for this game, with a pair of unders to close out the week, with the finale being that San Diego-Vegas contest. So that is how I view the games one by one. We'll wrap up tonight with a discussion of my 3-leg parlay of the week, which will start with the Jacksonville-Tulsa game, in which I will take the over at 90.5. These two teams are both on what are the two longest over streaks in the IFL right now, with Tulsa's streak that we talked about earlier currently sitting at 6 games, whereas Jacksonville tied with a couple other teams for a 3-game over streak. I love the upside that both of these offenses possess for this particular matchup, especially Tulsa's, against a Jacksonville team that may not have much in the way of immediate answers against this Tulsa attack, which, as we said before, at least 45 points in all of those wins. And Jacksonville, as we said before, still very proficient in offense under Sammy Edwards, getting guys like Jimmy Robinson and Jaden Stoshak more involved as well. I firmly believe that both teams get to 45. And if that's the case, this bet is a surefire winner. Remember, 45-45 game end of regulation goes to overtime or guaranteed a point after. So the math checks out. It doesn't check out, but it checks out in that scenario. So over 90.5 to kick the parlay attempt off. We will augment that with Fishers on the money line at minus 230. The minus 6.5 number is appealing there, especially laying just a nickel rather than the traditional dime. But given this is a parlay attempt, there's really no need to really put this in any peril at all. Taking the outright win on a team whose metrics have been very strong all season long, against a Quad City team where it's been a disappointment this year for them. They were the number 1 seed in the East last year. A lot went their way. They went out and put out some dominant performances, but this year has been something of a capped ceiling for them. Their past, all of their games since week 7 or week 8 have seen the Steam Wheeler score a maximum of 43 points as well. A number that probably does not increase given the injury issue surrounding Daquan Neal. So we'll trust the team that has its starting quarterback more or less more squared away, along with the team that, both teams have to have it here, but Fishers, they could also be eliminated with the loss as well. I don't think that happens here, though. I think Fishers will put together a win, get to a franchise high 8 wins. My final selection is going to be from the Tucson, Arizona game, in which I will take the over at 84.5. This is very much, in my mind at least, a contrarian play, because both prior matchups in this series did go under, 66-14 in mid-May, along with 35-28 just a few weeks ago. The reason why I do like the over in this context, though, is mainly due to the upside of both offenses. The Rattlers, especially so, with Max Miler's return at quarterback. And in the case of the Tucson Sugar Skulls, it's Jerome Johnson. We saw kind of like the floor of his play last week where you just see him throw a ball into peril and you're like, why? But he can also pull the rabbit out of the hat and do something that you would not have thought was possible. Through it all, in Johnson's 5 games as Tucson starter, the average Sugar Skull score has been 47 points per game. So even if they fall behind early in this game, just as they did back at home a couple weeks ago, they have proven they do have the firepower on offense to go chasing points if need be. So we're going to see if they're able to do that in a very, very tough environment against one of the toughest defenses to play in the IFL. But again, if Arizona can do the heavy lift here, get us to 54, something along those lines, not much of a lift left for Tucson to take care of the rest. So that will be our 3-leg attempt for this week. A $10 bet returns $52.29 if you would like to tail it or completely fade it. Would be better odds if you take the opposite on all three, but do with that info what you will. The 3-leg parlay, to recap it here, starting off with, well, all three are going to be Saturday games, but we have over 90.5 in Jacksonville, Tulsa, Fishers to win their game outright in Quad City against the Steamwheelers, and wrapping it up is Tucson and Arizona getting over that 84.5 mark. So that is it for this week of IFL discussion. I want to thank you all so much for hopping on. It's been a special time as always. Be sure to share with your friends, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Certainly helps grow the game and expand the channel out a little bit. If you are going to be placing wagers on the Indoor Football League this week, I wish you the very best of luck. And as always, I will see you at the cashier. Have an awesome night, everyone.